Have you ever wondered why you sometimes make choices that make absolutely no sense, even to yourself? Like buying something you don't really need, just because it was on sale. Or standing in a long line for a free coffee, even though your time is worth more than that coffee itself. Welcome to the world of predictable irrationality, the strange, fascinating way our minds trick us into making bad decisions over and over again, and why we all do it in exactly the same ways. This is the essence of Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, a behavioral economist who spent years studying how humans really behave when faced with choices. Spoiler alert, we're not as logical as we like to think. The illusion of rationality. For years, economists believed humans were rational creatures. They thought we carefully weighed costs and benefits before deciding. But Dan Ariely shows that's not true at all. In reality, our decisions are shaped by hidden forces, emotions, social pressure, expectations, and even random comparisons that shouldn't matter. We're not rational, but we're predictably irrational, meaning we make the same irrational mistakes again and again, in the same patterns. Ariely doesn't just tell us this. He proves it through fun and sometimes hilarious experiments that reveal the quirks of human nature. Chapter 1. The Truth About Free. Let's start with one of the most powerful words in the English language, free. Imagine you're offered two deals, a fancy truffle for 15 cents, a small chocolate kiss for 1 cent. Many people pick the truffle, a good deal for what it's worth. But when Ariely drops the price by 1 cent each, the truffle now 14 cents, the kiss now free, most people switch to the free one. Why? The price difference is the same, 1 cent. But free changes everything. It activates something deep in our emotions. When something is free, we stop thinking logically. We feel like there's no downside, no risk, even when it means losing a better opportunity. This is why buy one get one free or free shipping can make us spend more than we ever planned. The word free hijacks our brain's decision-making system. Ariely calls this the zero price effect. And once you notice it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Chapter 2. The Fallacy of Relative Thinking. Have you ever noticed how restaurants always list one overpriced dish on the menu? You'll rarely see anyone order it, but that's not its purpose. It's there to make everything else look reasonable. That's relativity in action. We don't judge things in isolation. We compare them. If someone shows you a 3000 suit next, TOA 1001, the cheaper one suddenly feels like a bargain, even if it's still overpriced. Ariely's experiments show we constantly anchor our decisions to comparisons, often the wrong ones. We're not deciding what something is worth. We're deciding how it feels relative to something else. Here's a funny twist. Once an anchor is set, our minds get stuck on it. That's why if you first see a product listed for $200 and later see ITO on sale for $120, it feels like a steal, even if it's still too expensive. Relativity makes us predictable. Marketers know this. That's why they always give us something to compare, to make us feel like we're choosing wisely. Chapter 3. The Cost of Social Norms. There are two invisible worlds guiding our behavior: social norms and market norms. Social norms are about relationships, kindness, and community. Market norms are about money, contracts, and exchange. When we mix the two, things get messy. For example, if your friend helps you move furniture, that's social behavior, done out of friendship. But if you suddenly offer him $20 for the help, you've shifted the relationship into market norms, and it actually feels insulting. Ariely discovered that once money enters a social relationship, the warmth disappears. The same happens in companies that try to call employees a family, but then treat them purely by market standards: bonuses, layoffs, numbers. It creates confusion and resentment. The takeaway? We live better when we respect the boundary between social and market norms. Generosity and friendship thrive without money. But when money gets involved, our behavior and our emotions change completely. Chapter 4. The Cost of Zero Cost. We already talked about how free changes our behavior, but there's something even deeper behind it. Ariely ran an experiment where people could choose between a free Hershey's Kiss or a discounted Lindt truffle for 14 cents. Almost everyone picked the free kiss, but when he adjusted both prices slightly, the kiss for 1 cent, the truffle for 15, suddenly more people chose the truffle. Why? Because at 1 cent, people started to think logically again. At 0 cents, logic disappears. Free triggers an emotional reaction that blinds us to value. So next time you rush to grab a free sample or a free subscription trial, remember, nothing is ever truly free. Your attention, time, or data might be the hidden cost. Chapter 5. The problem with procrastination and self-control. Now let's talk about one of the most human struggles, procrastination. Ariely asked his students to submit 3 papers across a semester. Some could set their own deadlines. Others had fixed ones. Guess who performed better? The ones with fixed deadlines. Why? Because we're terrible at long-term self-control. When goals feel far away, we delay them endlessly. Even when we know what's good for us, eating healthy, saving money, exercising, we often fail to act because the pain of discipline today feels heavier than the reward tomorrow. Ariely calls this the problem of self-control, the tug-of-war between our now self and future self. Our now self always wins because it lives in the present. The trick? We need systems that protect us from our own short-term impulses, deadlines, automatic savings, commitment devices. Because willpower alone isn't enough. Chapter 6, The High Price of Ownership. Here's another mental trap, the endowment effect. We tend to overvalue things we own simply because they're ours. Ariely tested this with Duke basketball tickets. Fans who won the lottery to get tickets valued them at hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Those who didn't win were only willing to pay a fraction of that. Same ticket, different perception. Ownership changes how we see value. It's why selling your old phone feels harder than buying a new one. Why people cling to bad investments. Why letting go of objects, ideas, or even relationships feels painful. We attach identity to what we own. To think clearly, we must step outside this illusion and ask, if I didn't already own this, how much would I pay for it today? Chapter 7, The Hidden Logic of Dishonesty. Let's start with a question. If you could cheat and know you wouldn't get caught, would you? Most people like to think they're honest. But Ariely's experiments show something surprising. Almost everyone cheats, just a little. He ran an experiment with students solving math puzzles. Some had to hand in their papers to be graded. Others could self-report their scores and shred the papers afterward. You'd expect massive cheating when no one's watching, right? But that's not what happened. Most people cheated, but only a little bit, enough to feel the benefit, but not enough to feel like a bad person. That's the strange part. We want the benefits of cheating, but we also want to feel honest. Ariely calls this the fudge factor. It's the mental space that allows us to cheat just enough while still believing we're good people. Even more interesting, when people were reminded of moral values, like recalling the 10 Commandments or signing an honor code, cheating dropped to 0, not because they feared punishment, but because their moral compass was activated. It's not the fear of getting caught that keeps us honest. It's the reminders of who we want to be. Chapter 8, The Power of Expectations and Placebos. Now imagine you're given 2 pills for a headache. One costs $2.50 per pill. The other costs just 10 cents. Both look the same, but guess what? People report more pain relief from the expensive one. That's the placebo effect. And it's not just in medicine. Our expectations literally shape our experience. If you expect an expensive wine to taste amazing, your brain actually creates that experience. Brain scans show more pleasure activity when people think something costs more, even if it's identical. In other words, we don't just see reality, we create it through expectation. Marketers, advertisers, and even doctors use this psychology every day. Luxury brands, fancy packaging, exclusive memberships, all designed to raise expectations, which then raise satisfaction. It's both beautiful and dangerous. Because when expectations become too powerful, we can't tell what's real anymore. We start living in a world of illusions we helped build. Chapter 9, When Emotion Takes Control. Imagine you're calm right now, thinking clearly, rationally. Now imagine you're furious, heartbroken, or overwhelmed with desire. Would you make the same choices? Dan Ariely explored this with a controversial but brilliant experiment. He asked college students to answer questions about sexual behavior twice, once when calm and once when aroused, using a private computer survey. The results were shocking. When emotionally charged, their answers completely changed. They became riskier, more impulsive, less moral. They even ignored safety and consent concerns. What does this show? That when emotion takes over, our rational mind disappears. We like to believe we can control ourselves in intense situations, but we can't. In fact, the emotional brain doesn't even consult the rational brain before acting. That's why people say things in anger they later regret. Why love makes us blind. Why in the heat of the moment, we forget logic, promises, even identity. Ariely's lesson here is humble but powerful. Don't make decisions when emotional. And if possible, design your life to protect yourself from your emotional self. Because once passion takes over, reason leaves the room. Chapter 10, the power of price and perception. What if price doesn't just reflect quality, but creates it? Ariely tested this with wine tastings, energy drinks, and even painkillers. When people paid more for a product, they not only believed it worked better, they felt it worked better. Their brains showed more pleasure, more satisfaction, even more energy. When the same item was discounted or free, people's brains reacted less positively. It's not the product that changed, it's the perception. This is why luxury brands can thrive on pure illusion, why a $300 cream feels more effective than a $30 one, and why cheap often feels like bad, even when it's not. The mind doesn't just record experience, it creates it, shaped by price, context, and expectation. So next time you fall in love with an expensive gadget or luxury item, ask yourself, do I love the object or do I love what I believe it says about me? Chapter 11, the problem with keeping options open. Let's talk about choices. In modern life, we love having options. We want to keep every door open, just in case. But Ariely found that this constant need to keep options open often hurts us. He ran a game where players could choose between doors, giving random rewards. Even when they knew which door was best, they kept clicking others, afraid of missing out. Sound familiar? That's FOMO, the fear of missing out, long before the term existed. In life, we do this all the time. We hold on to relationships that aren't working. We keep jobs we hate, because what if? We even overload ourselves with hobbies, apps, or commitments just to feel we're not missing something. But keeping all doors open drains energy, time, and focus. Real growth comes from closing doors and committing to one path. When everything is possible, nothing truly happens. Chapter 12, the high cost of fairness. Humans love fairness, even when it costs us. In one experiment, Ariely used a simple game. One person splits $10. The other accepts or rejects the offer. If rejected, both get nothing. Logically, you should accept any non-zero offer. But emotionally, people reject unfair splits like 9-1 just to punish unfairness. Our sense of fairness overrides logic. It's why we boycott brands, tip servers, or demand justice even when it's expensive. It's built deep into our social DNA, a survival instinct from our tribal ancestors. But this instinct can hurt in modern life, like when people reject useful deals just to feel fair. Ariely's point, fairness feels good, but it's not always rational. We must learn when to follow fairness and when to let it go. Chapter 13, the power of social pressure and expectations. Imagine you're at a fancy dinner. Everyone orders expensive wine, so you do too, even though you prefer something cheaper. That's social pressure in action. We want to fit in, to match the crowd. It's part of our wiring for belonging. But social pressure doesn't just change our choices, it changes our experience. In blind tests, people can't tell which wine they like best, but once told the brand or price, they genuinely taste the difference. That's the brain aligning experience with expectation. This isn't fake, it's how our brains save energy. Instead of analyzing every detail, they rely on cues, brand names, prices, reputation, popularity. The key is awareness. When you know this, you can step outside the illusion and ask, am I choosing this because I like it or because others do? Chapter 14, the magic of adaptation. Finally, Ariely talks about how humans adapt, often too quickly. Think about the last big thing you bought, a car, a phone, a house. Remember how excited you felt? Now think about how normal it feels today. That's hedonic adaptation, the way we return to emotional baseline. No matter what happens, good or bad, our feelings fade over time. We think a new job, house, or relationship will make us permanently happy. But after a while, we adapt, and it feels ordinary again. Ariely suggests that instead of chasing constant excitement, we should design lives that give sustained satisfaction, purpose, connection, curiosity, things that don't fade with time. Because lasting happiness doesn't come from what we get, but from how we grow. At this point, Ariely has shown us something profound. We are not purely logical beings. Our choices are driven by invisible forces, emotions, expectations, fairness, social pressure, and the stories we tell ourselves. But that's not bad news. Because once we see these patterns, we can change them. We can start making smarter, calmer, more conscious choices. Chapter 15, the truth about self-control, and why we lose it. Let's begin with a familiar scene. It's late at night. You promised yourself you'd eat healthy, but there's that glowing fridge door, whispering, "Just one slice of cake." That's the battle between our present self and future self. The future self wants health, success, and long-term happiness. But the present self? It wants dopamine right now. Dan Ariely calls this the problem of self-control. It's not about weak willpower. It's about how our brains are wired. The emotional part wants instant rewards. The rational part plans for later. And when the two collide, emotion usually wins. Ariely compares it to driving a car with two steering wheels, one controlled by logic, one by temptation. Guess which one grabs the wheel when you're tired or stressed? So what's the solution? He says we must design our environment to protect ourselves from our own impulses. If you can't resist sweets, don't keep them at home. If you waste time online, use blockers. If you overspend, automate your savings before temptation even begins. True self-control isn't about superhuman willpower. It's about removing the triggers that make willpower necessary in the first place. Chapter 16. Why we overvalue keeping our options open. Humans hate losing options, even when they're useless. Ariely tested this with a computer game where doors offered random rewards. The best strategy was to focus on the most rewarding door. But people couldn't do it. They kept clicking other doors, afraid of missing something better. This experiment mirrors life. We date multiple people instead of committing. We start new projects without finishing old ones. We chase new careers before mastering the current one. We think keeping options open makes us free, but it actually traps us in anxiety and distraction. Real freedom, Ariely suggests, comes from closing doors with confidence. Every time you eliminate an option, you reclaim energy, focus, and peace. So next time you hesitate to commit, remember, not every open door leads somewhere worthwhile. Chapter 17. The Power of Behavioral Design. At this stage, Ariely moves from observation to application. He asks, if we're all predictably irrational, how can we design a world that helps us make better choices? He calls this behavioral design, creating systems that guide people toward better decisions without taking away freedom. For example, automatically enrolling workers in retirement plans increases savings dramatically because it removes the barrier of deciding. Setting default options like organ donor increases participation because most people stick with the default. Apps that round up your purchases to save money use small nudges to build good habits. The lesson? Don't rely on motivation alone. Design your environment so that the easiest path is the best path. We're not weak, we're just human. So let's build systems that make good behavior the default, not the struggle. Chapter 18. Why we cheat and how to stop. Remember the earlier experiment where people cheated just a little? Ariely dug deeper and found something startling. Creativity increases dishonesty. Why? Because creative people can rationalize better. They can come up with stories to justify small lies. Like, I'm not stealing, I'm just borrowing. Or everyone else does it. The more clever we are, the better we are at deceiving ourselves. But there's hope. When people are reminded of moral values, honesty, integrity, kindness, they cheat less. Even signing your name at the top of a form before filling it out makes people more truthful because it activates moral identity early. So to live more honestly, we must make morality visible. Surround ourselves with reminders of who we want to be, not rules that punish, but cues that inspire. Because in the end, honesty isn't enforced, it's remembered. Chapter 19. How our minds fool us and how to fool them back. Ariely's research shows that our brains are full of shortcuts, heuristics, that save time but create illusions. For example, anchoring. The first number you hear sticks in your mind. That's why salespeople start high. Confirmation bias. You believe what supports your existing opinion. Availability bias. You think whatever's easiest to recall is most common. If you just saw a shark attack on TV, you'll think they're frequent. But the trick isn't to eliminate biases. That's impossible. It's to recognize them and use them against themselves. Set your own anchors before marketers do. Remind yourself of data before making big choices. And when emotions flare, pause. Because delay is the most underrated form of intelligence. Our brains are like powerful engines with flawed navigation systems. If we understand the errors, we can still drive beautifully, just not blindly. Chapter 20. the role of trust and meaning. After all these experiments on irrationality, Ariely doesn't end in cynicism. He ends with hope. He discovered that despite all our biases, people still crave fairness, love, and purpose. When trust is high, we behave generously. When we feel seen, we act honestly. When we believe our work matters, we do it better, not because of money, but because of meaning. In one experiment, participants built Lego figures for pay. In the first round, their creations were kept aside. In the second, each creation was disassembled in front of them immediately after finishing. The result? Even though the pay was the same, motivation dropped drastically when their work was destroyed. The message is powerful. We don't work just for money, we work for meaning. When our effort feels respected, we give more of ourselves. So whether you're a boss, a parent, or just someone designing your own day, always build meaning into the task. People thrive not when they're paid most, but when they matter most. Chapter 21, How to Live with Our Irrationality. Ariely closes the book with a simple, humble truth. We can't become perfectly rational, but we can become less irrational by understanding our predictable flaws. We gain power. Power to pause before impulse. Power to question our comparisons. Power to say no to free when it costs our peace. He invites us to stop blaming ourselves for being human. Instead, embrace it and learn to dance with our irrational minds rather than fight them. After all, it's not logic that makes life rich. It's the messy, emotional, unpredictable, beautiful irrationality that makes us who we are. The final thought. If you take one thing away from Predictably Irrational, let it be this. We are not broken, we're just biased. And once we understand our predictable irrationality, we can turn it from a weakness into a strength. We can make better money decisions, build healthier habits, create workplaces that inspire, not just pay, and build societies that guide, not punish. Ariely's work reminds us that the path to wisdom isn't about removing emotion. It's about designing a life that works with it. So next time you're about to make a decision, big or small, pause. Ask yourself not just, what do I want, but also, what invisible force is guiding me right now? That single moment of awareness could be the most rational act of all. Thanks for watching. If this summary helped you, drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts about money. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who wants to take control of their money. See you in the next video.